Welcome to this explainer. Today we are going to demystify something truly mind-bending, the GL16-2 orbit execution model. We're going to dive into how some of the most profound mathematical truths in existence, from the actual emergence of pi to incredibly complex spatial geometries, emerge from a shockingly simple, completely finite mechanism. It's really wild stuff. Look, I want to start off with this fascinating thought straight from our source material. Sometimes the universe's most complex geometries and constants, they just can't be fully grasped through massive chalk-dusted equations. Instead, they can only be understood by watching a perfect, finite pattern unfold right in front of you. Okay, let's take a really quick look at our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with a ring of 16 coins, establish the delta law, introduce observers in infinite lenses, witness the emergence of pi, and finish up with Metatron's formal proof. Let's jump right into section 1, a ring of 16 coins, the core state space. So I want you to picture a simple ring of exactly 16 coins. Essentially, this represents a 16-bit computational register. And what's absolutely incredible is that everything in the GL16-2 model, and I mean everything, from the helical forms of DNA all the way up to the architecture of high-dimensional polytopes, emerges entirely from this remarkably tiny space. It's literally just a foundational bit ring. Now, because we're only dealing with 16 coins showing either ones or zeros, there's a hard limit here. There are exactly 65,536 possible states in this entire universe. That's our finite domain. And because the space is bounded like that, the pigeonhole principle kicks in. This means every single sequence of changes has to, eventually, loop back on itself in a perfect finite orbit. There's nowhere else for it to go. Moving on to section 2, the delta law, mechanics of the machine. So what's the actual rule of motion in this little universe? Well, the source material calls it the delta law. The machine only executes these three incredibly simple, completely reversible actions. It rotates the bits left or right, it applies a reversible XOR logic gate to make sure no information is lost, and it observes a sign bit. That's the whole shebang. It just repeatedly shifts the orbit and state space deterministically. It never requires or even stores any external knowledge. Here's where it gets really interesting. Out of those 16 bits, one specific bit is designated as the omicron. This single omicron bit acts as the absolute tiniest point of meaning in the whole system. Think of it as the sign bit, or the eye of the machine, because it completely governs whether the flow of the system is outgoing, which the text calls OMI, or returning inward, which it calls IMO. All right, section 3, observers and infinite lenses, generating structures. Let's see how this coin ring builds into something massive when we introduce what the model calls observers. Now, observers are simply different mathematical quotient maps. You can think of them as lenses through which we view the exact same set of flipping coins. Depending on the specific math you use to look at the state, completely different geometries pop out. Modulo 7, you get a phonoplane. Modulo 4, bam, a tetrahedron. If you look for quadratic invariants, you get an energy metric. Same bits, totally different worlds. And this brilliantly illustrates a core philosophical and mathematical concept for us. While the physical bits themselves remain absolutely identical, changing that interpretation constant creates entirely mutually exclusive realities. It's a huge shift in perspective, right? You literally cannot view the state as a clock and a polytope at the exact same time. The core machine is just this solitary, unchanging loop, but our interpretations of it, they're incredibly rich and varied. Which brings us to section 4, the emergence of pi, mathematical magic. Okay, this next part is literally mind-bending. Let's observe what happens to that omicron bit over time. It sounds totally impossible. Actually, scratch that. It sounds like magic. How does a finite 16-bit loop of flipping coins organically generate the infinite sequence of pi? No, seriously. Let's actively look at how the machine achieves this without ever having pi programmed into its memory. Well, it comes down to tracking the orbit's path, a concept known as the holonomy trace. If you simply watch that one alternating omicron sign bit, remember, it just flips from +1 to -1 as the system rotates, and you divide it by a sequence of alternating odd numbers. This incredible series emerges naturally. +1/1, -1/3, +1/5. If you run that out, the resulting infinite sum perfectly converges to pi/4. Multiply that whole thing by 4, and boom, the fundamental constant of circular motion emerges naturally from the perfect palindromic balance of the machine itself. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. The machine doesn't have pi stored in some secret memory vault. It's not running an approximation algorithm. The math simply reflects the absolute perfect balance of this closed circular system. Finally, Section 5, Metatron's formal proof, ironclad certainty. Now, you might be wondering, okay, this sounds cool, but is it actually proven? To prove this isn't just some fun speculative theory, we have to turn to the absolute authority of mathematical verification. The sources use these ancient theological terms neutrally, just as structural metaphors. So, Metatron's scroll represents a vast document of thousands of lines of ironclad, mechanically verified computer code. It's written in a rigorous proof assistant called COC 8.18. It doesn't argue an opinion, it just mathematically witnesses the truth. This proof is our ultimate witness. It confirms without a shadow of a doubt the core claims of the GL16-2 model. It verifies determinism, same input, same output every time. It verifies reversibility. It verifies that strict 65,536 state closure we talked about. It verifies the emergence of pi and phi. And, crucially, it verifies that the gate condition, structurally referred to as the tetragrammatron, where 4 diagonals perfectly XOR to 0, ensures absolute symmetry and zero drift in the system forever. Zero drift. And that brings us to the grand unification. Metatron's scroll proves that absolutely nothing exists outside this single delta function and the category of observers looking at it. That's it. There is only one primitive core operation, one bounded 16-bit domain, and one palindromic closure. Everything else we see is just a lens applied to that one singular reality. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to keep this one core axiom in mind. The 16-bit engine remains completely solitary and unchanging. Meanwhile, the realities it generates, from simple clocks to the 5,040 slots of the orbital atlas, depend entirely on the lens you choose to apply. It leaves us with such a profound realization about our universe, for sure. It proves that sometimes what appears to be infinite, staggering complexity is actually just complete, beautiful simplicity waiting patiently for the right observer. So I leave you with this. What lens are you looking through?